ago, I can still hear her voice ringing in my ear. It took only those 2 words.
It's me.
What's wrong?
Rakesh, I got into an accident.
I guess the main thing is I can't decide if she was fundamentally an unhappy person, which is how I knew her, or if she was meant to be a happy person but just never got the chance to be one.
Well, but nothing that occurs in our lives can really affect our happiness one way or the other in the long run.
What? Yeah, this was kind of a spur of the moment.
Ah, perfect. I always feel surprise vacations are the best vacations. If you do not anticipate, you cannot be disappointed.
Can I ask, have you decided if you're coming back?
Well, I'm not moving to Russia.
You a Russian? You no look so Russian.
Well, my grandmother is, or was, but she had to leave. That's my grandmother, Natalia.
Oh, okay, this one is Anna, my babushka.
Right, okay.
And this one, of course, is Svetlana Stalina.
I walked one day into my father's office and heard him on the telephone saying,
So it's a car accident.
He wasn't asking a question. He was declaring a decision had been made.
A car accident. Good.
Some things have come to light about me, about where I come from, about my family beliefs.
Once you have gained sight, it is impossible to feign blindness.
First thing I'll do right away is ask you both to introduce yourselves and tell us what your role was on the creative team for Jonathan Spector's world premiere of This Much I Know.
I can go first. My name is Sarah Rose Leonard, and I am the dramaturg for This Much I Know.
My name is Jordan Battle, and I am the CDO, or the Confronting and Dismantling Oppression Consultant for This Much I Know.
Great, thank you both. Sarah, you've been with this script for quite some time. You were the dramaturg working with Jonathan on this script long before we decided to do the world premiere at Aurora. First of all, tell us, like in your words, what you think the play is about, and then tell us a little bit about your journey with this script and working with Jonathan.
Yeah, this play is about so many things, and I think depending on the day, I have a different answer because it resonates differently, which is what I love about the play. But I always feel like we have these 3 different storylines weaving together, all swirling around this idea of what are we responsible for in our lives, in our past. What are we responsible for that we inherit? What are we choosing? And how often we walk through the world not fully being able as humans to be conscious of our actions and what it looks like when you suddenly realize that your actions perhaps have been contributing in ways that are negatively affecting your life, and how little choice sometimes we have in our conscious brains over those actions. Consciousness versus unconsciousness, thinking behaviors 1 and 2 from Daniel Kahneman is the nerdy version. And then on this play, I was actually like a blind reader for a while. Jonathan was developing it in a play group he has that I was a dramaturg for with his theater company that he had/has, depending on if we're doing something again, called Just Theater. And for a long time, I was just responding to it. He started writing the play in the ground floor Berkeley Rap Center for the Creation and Development of New Work. And I used to be the literary manager at Berkeley Rap. So I was there when it began. And then I just kind of kept being a reader for it. And then eventually there was a workshop, and Jonathan asked if I would step in officially as a dramaturg. And at that point, this play is very historical, and there's a lot about Svetlana Stalina, Stalin's daughter. There's a lot from Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. There's a lot to read. And I actually spent, I guess at this point, 2 years not reading anything on purpose, like avoiding everything. So I could tell Jonathan, I have no idea what you're talking about and I don't care here, or like, what is this? I want to know more, but I don't want to go read anything. Can you tell me more in the play? And that was really important. And that's for this process with the production, really special to have Jordan come in as Blind Eyes and be like, I also don't understand what's happening here, because I long ago stopped being able to do that. So then I read every single book about Svetlana, about Derek Black, who inspired a storyline, who was a white supremacist turns activist, and about psychology and our thinking patterns. And then I became more of a resource for actors, designers, and the director eventually when we stepped into workshops and then eventually a production.
Great. Oh, wow. Yeah, all those books. That's a lot of reading. That's a lot.
Thank God that pandemic happened. It slowed me down. I had more time.
So Jordan, what the heck does it mean to be a CDO consultant on a play?
Yeah, that is a very new term. I will say for me, being a CDO consultant specifically, since Aurora uses CDO, is being the person in the room who's kind of flagging when things don't feel right. And so it could be whether it's something in the script that feels a little bit icky, or something in the rehearsal process, or, as actors are talking through their characters and they're like, I don't really know if I would say this or feel this thing. And it's mostly being there as somebody who can be like, I'm seeing this from the perspective of a person of color, and this doesn't feel right. This doesn't resonate with me. Something about this is going to either make people angry or have people be confused. Can you clarify this in some way? And just kind of creating a space where the actors and the production crew, and honestly, even stage management can really come forward and just be like, I don't know how to talk this through either with Sarah Rose or with Josh or with Jonathan. Can I say this to you and either have you say it on my behalf or have you there to help me push my idea forward in a way that's comfortable and a way so that I feel like I'm heard. And it's a very new position. And I actually really enjoyed it in this show, actually, because the actors took that opportunity to be heard and not be penalized for it and ran with it. And I love it.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I think it's important to note that that Jonathan was writing to a lot of big ideas, big themes. Sarah Rose mentioned that there's a storyline dealing with a young man who's a white nationalist, and Jonathan is a cis-het white guy, and Josh is a cis-het white guy, and 2 of the 3 actors are actually BIPOC actors of color. So to have some additional voices in the room, to have someone there who's an advocate doing maybe a little bit of caretaking, but also maybe a little bit of rabble rousing, feels right and appropriate. And I hope, certainly at Aurora, but wider in the theater field, that we continue to have these kind of consultants in the room, independent of race, gender, ability of who's directing the play or who's in the play, but to really just lean into the fact that our patrons meet the play from a place where they're at, and we might have patrons that are people of color, disabled, queer, transgender, and to have somebody in the room, part of the creative team, helping to think through all the avenues, barriers to access, points of contact, feels really important. So I'm proud that we hired you on to do this. Now, Jordan, in your words, what the heck is This Much I Know about?
Yeah, in my words, This Much I Know, I think I actually did the opposite explanation whenever somebody asked me of Sarah Rose, is I say it starts with a whole bunch of storyline about a guy who's a former white supremacist, maybe, and his process of trying to decide if he's going to let that go, and like his choices that he makes throughout the play, and whether he's responsible for all the choices that he's made either presently or in the past. And alongside that as well, it's a story about a professor and his wife who are trying to figure out the choices that they've made. Have they made choices together? Are they making choices apart? And how does that affect their relationship? And just really how those things all intertwine in somebody's lives. You never know what someone's going through. So to see it kind of lined up together, really just for me was just like, these things don't fit, but then nobody's life ever fits nicely. So it's just watching it all play out of how these things all interact with each other on stage.
Great. How have audiences been responding to the play? What are some of the questions you're getting?
I mean, I think it's interesting. Sorry, it's so interesting hearing you say what the play is about, Jordan, because I do think everyone's personal experience and how they enter shapes where they start with the play. Like, the play equally weights Harold's storyline, the white supremacist, Svetlana Stalina's storyline, the daughter of Stalin, and our character who plays also Svetlana, Natalia, who is a woman, you know, in pre-COVID today, trying to deal with a lot of culpability she holds from an accident she had. I'm not gonna give away too much. And then and her husband, Lukesh, who is an Indian British professor of psychology, who's grappling with the fact that Natalia left without saying where she was going or why she left, and is simultaneously teaching us a lecture about psychology. So all of those things are actually working in equal weight in the play. So it's really cool in the talkbacks because someone will start with a different one of those storylines. Often I've heard that people will enter and say something about the psychology professor. Often they've taken a psychology class or happen to know a lot about psychology. Yay, Berkeley, so smart. People really start with their heads a lot. But really satisfyingly, a lot of people actually have responded more with personal histories. We had someone in the audience the other day whose ancestors, who was born in Moscow and whose ancestors were killed by Stalin. And that was amazing because he just walked in, he was just an Aurora subscriber. He just walked in not knowing that. And it's so funny, we talk about, you know, trigger warning, do we put a trigger warning? And no one was like, oh, we should just warn anyone whose ancestors were killed by Stalin that they might be triggered by this play. But it's, you know, we go through some really upsetting history that for this man was personal. And that was such a beautiful way to enter the play. Other people started, their reactions were a lot about there's a lot of illusion in the play. There's a lot of mind tricks, which is what makes it really fun and theatrical. Jonathan is trying to do the equivalent of what Daniel Kahneman in his book describes as the thinking 1 and 2. What are we conscious of when we're thinking? What are we not conscious of? So he tries to build in some things that trick you in the play, and you realize like, oh, I didn't know I was thinking about that, but suddenly I am, because he planted that thought in my mind. He primed us to think about the letter Z when he showed us this zebra. We repeat certain phrases throughout that, if you don't know the play super well, hopefully work like tricks. So we've had a lot of people be like, oh my God, that was a series of illusions and I didn't realize this play was about this. But I saw myself thinking about X, Y, and Z, whatever the thing is that they hooked onto. So I love that about the play. It's, to me, what makes it theater and not a book or a TV. Jordan, what stood out for you in the talkback we had?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the amount of folks who were just like, I resonated with this whole thing. And then it was tell us more. Which part of it did you resonate with? Was it something with Harold? Was it something with Natalia trying to figure out her ancestry? Yeah, and the person who talked about illusion, and then the person who definitely was like, there's no choices in this play. We don't see anybody make choices. And I think we were all kind of sitting there like, okay, tell us more about why you don't see any choices in this play. And also, I mean, even listening to like Kenny respond to that question, and Kenny's interpretation of that was really interesting. Of just like, is he making choices as an actor? Is he making choices as Harold? Is Josh as a director encouraging them to make choice? And where is that written on the page? I thought it was just a really interesting question that I wasn't expecting that in our talk back.
Now, Jonathan is having a super huge premiere of Eureka Day, originally commissioned by Aurora Theater Company as part of our ONG programming. And so he was sort of, I was about to say bi-coastal, but really like bi-continental during this process. And I know that, you know, in the early days he was on Zoom and stuff, but there was a period of time where he came into rehearsal and some rewrites happened. Do either of you want to speak to that part of it actually being a world premiere new play process where the writer is generating new material as the actors are staging and learning lines?
Yeah, usually, you know, in a new play, we try not to have the playwright make too many rewrites without context. So it's interesting that he dropped in for weeks 2 and 3, which was good because it was enough time for him to see a little bit about the shape Josh was creating. And we had a lot of rewrites because, you know, we've had this play only read out loud once in a workshop we did at Manhattan Theater Club in front of a live audience. And our question then was really like, is everyone tracking? Is anyone confused? Did we lose anybody? Because it's a lot of threads. And our question for this, you know, is the same, but we felt more comfortable about, okay, we think it all makes sense. Where are the sticking points? And what's not flowing, what isn't working for an actor. So Jonathan tried to address kind of anything that just wasn't feeling right to him. But interestingly, you know, the most rewrites that have happened have been about the Harold storyline because it has been the hardest part of the play to crack, and we really don't want it to distract from the rest of the play. Like, it's not what the play is about. It is not a story of this one man and then there's a bunch of other things. These are equally rated storylines. So we really, really want Harold to feel integrated into the play. And partially just because of the moment we're in time, Harold was receiving a lot of attention. And it was really helpful to have Jordan there to be able to address that storyline. And also, frankly, Kenny had tons of work to do, right? He's playing so many different Russians, and he's also playing Harold. And Jonathan coming in kind of midway through the process, we're watching Kenny mid his own process. So we don't want to be like, oh God, that's not working, we have to rewrite it. So it was a lot of rewriting for Harold because of Kenny finding it, Jordan being there, being like, these are some parts that make me uncomfortable. Or these are some parts that I have questions about, or these are some parts that I think are really working. And so Harold received, you know, a lot of attention, and we did a lot of rewriting specifically there. And then we also wanted to make sure that Lukesh and Natalia are feeling connected. They spend a lot of the play in different worlds, and really wanting to make sure their relationship is the heart of the play that moves us through. And so we also did some rewrites around those two characters, making sure that we're tracking their connection and disconnection through the play. Yeah.
Jordan, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, poor Kenny. Poor Kenny and technically Rajesh, because they really were going through it as those scenes were getting rewritten. And there were days that like Jonathan was in the room and I was on Zoom, or so I'm like trying to listen for things and I'm like, this doesn't sound right on Zoom, but maybe because I'm not actually sitting there experiencing it the same way as the rest of them. And yeah, those scenes did get the most rewrites. And I think for me listening to it, the Natalia and Lukesh scenes didn't need as much work because they were actually working separately. Like Sarah Rose said, like they were in different worlds. Their storylines didn't overlap as much. So we weren't seeing their relationship play out to be like, maybe this isn't as tense as it should be, or maybe this argument that they're having doesn't actually resonate for somebody who's married or single or whatever. So yeah, those Harold and Lukesh scenes for me needed the most work just because they weren't hitting in a way of just like, have we explored all the reasons that this Harold character is going to Lukesh? And have we explored all the reasons why Lukesh is responding in this way? Have we explored, all the different angles that we could enter these points of like, no, this is not the main story, but somebody's going to catch on that this is a really big deal, just like these other two stories. And we need to make sure that like we are not, there was a conversation of, are we letting him off the hook? No spoiler there. But like that was a real conversation of like, is this going to have just as much weight as the other things, and are we taking as much care with this story as the other two? Because for me, the other two were just so strong and being done so beautifully at that point that it was just like, this is the one that's got all the hairs coming up on my arms, and how do we work that? And are we seeing other people in the room cringe in the rehearsal process? How do we work that? Like those were the ones for me that I'm impressed at Jonathan's process of Jonathan watching a scene and then hearing the next day, new pages. Okay, wow, that was really cool, y'all. Good luck.
Yeah, I'm just opened a world premiere that I co-directed with Eric Ting, so I'm coming fresh off of my own like new play experience and like getting new pages right up to the minute. I just wanted to go back on just a couple things. One, you had mentioned the gentleman who was from Moscow, and Liz Lotta is our incredible artist who does these the show art for us. And when we were generating show art for This Much I Know, there was a thumbnail version that was an image of Stalin, and I remember that for us internally, we had a conversation about, was that a valuable image or not? And so we, as a result of those conversations, we moved in a different direction. Liz had provided plenty of options. So now we have the zebra getting some lipstick on. So it is interesting in terms of content advisory, because ultimately everything could have a content advisory, and the degree to that maybe everything should have a content advisory, or what that means to even say that. We try at Aurora to not use the language trigger warning, but to be clear about like what you might encounter in the story. But I want to talk about, because in all candor, when I first read the play, I said straight up to Josh, like, it's so cerebral, it's so heady, like I don't feel smart. Like when I read the play, I'm so confused. And I know that that's been a part of the process. And even just recently, as we are like doing pull quotes from the reviews, or we're cutting the trailer, Josh has been very clear that like there are heartfelt moments in the story, there is heartwarming moments, there is joy in the story. I wonder if you would each be willing to just share a little bit about a moment, perhaps a heartfelt moment or a joyous moment or an endearing moment that really stands out for you in the production.
No, Jordan, you laugh louder than me. I want yours.
Oh, fun. It's like, I don't know if the moments that I'm laughing at are heartwarming. The ending, and I'm not gonna tell you exactly what happens, but the ending moment for me is very endearing, and it like is so sweet to watch with the folks who are on stage. Just because they're looking at each other, and I'm trying to do this without saying who's on stage and giving any information away, but like the two folks who are on stage, the way they're looking at each other and knowing the journey that they've gone through is just so lovely to watch. And I'm an audience watcher, so I'm watching what's happening on stage, and then I'll look at the people in the audience and just seeing some folks who are actually tearing up, or some folks who are like, oh, that's so sweet, and just seeing them watch these folks come full circle for me is just really, really lovely.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. Like I think there's actually a lot of emotion in like everyone in this play is looking for something, and so there's like a searching quality for me, particularly in Natalia's journey, this need to know something that happened to her family that is actually hard to describe, and I would argue undescribable, but like why do we search for the things we search for in life, which I recognize as a potentially intellectual question that I think when you are, again, in the magic of theater, when you're in a space with a real person, and that person is acting and they're going through that journey, it surprised me how much I have felt watching, in this case, Anna Ishida, our actress, try to look for something that she doesn't have any words for, because I can certainly name times in my life where I'm like, I don't know why I need this, but I need it, and I'm trying to figure out how I get it, but I don't even know how to describe what it is. I think we've all had that, and it's not very tangible, and I love that Jonathan is trying to write towards that really intangible feeling.
Great. Thank you both so much.
I think I'd love to address that. We've talked a lot about process, and I think it's a new place, so we're still working on it. And certainly, having new people in the room has been such a gift to it. And audiences change the play. So I think I'd love to just share that the audience, every time Jordan laughs is super informative, and I love it. And it's really, really helpful to hear, when is everybody laughing? When is just Jordan laughing? When is just one person laughing? When do people feel uncomfortable? All of that is really, really helpful as Jonathan and I continue to work on the play. I've told him, I'm like, we can't write anything for a while. This is time to rest and put it in a drawer. So Lana has this phrase in the play, she's writing for the drawer. And it's all learning though that we're doing. And it's just super helpful this is just the moment we're in, to be open again to new people in our lives and to have them inform the piece. And Dawn, hearing you be like, oh guys, it was hard for me initially, too intellectual. All of that is just so helpful. We can't write a play that works for every single person, but knowing that you never want to lose anyone, right? You never want to, you want to build an experience that is as open and welcoming in its storytelling as possible in theater in general, no matter what story you're telling. So it's been incredibly essential to have reactions.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. So the version I read when I was brought in was not the version we are working with currently. And so I definitely remember having the conversation of just okay, this is a hard one to get through. And then as the actors put it in their bodies and found their characters, it was easier to find the moments of joy and what was funny and what wasn't funny. I will admit, I'm not somebody who laughs easily. I love to laugh, but I'm not somebody who laughs easily. And so it took, Anna and Kenny and Rajesh putting it in their bodies and finding those moments for me to be like, oh my goodness, this is a lot funnier than we expected. And I will say, yes, I am the person who will laugh the loudest in the audience, because now I've seen them figure out those moments, and they're hitting it so consistently that I will fully admit, opening night, me and my little group of friends were cackling quite hard. But that was good. That was helpful, because it was also when we laughed or we didn't laugh, we could see other folks being what are they finding funny, and processing that in the moment. Or we were watching other folks laugh and figuring out what have I not heard here that other folks heard for the first time? What's changing, what's resonating, what's really working today. And so, yeah, as Sarah said, this has been really wonderful to see with audiences and figure out where folks are watching these moments. I'm definitely the person who will watch other people in the audience just as much as I'm watching the play. So even when we did the talkback last week, I was totally sitting there what are people laughing at? What are they not finding funny? What do I see people scratching their heads? I didn't catch that joke. And I think that's great. And I think all of that information is super helpful for both Sarah Rose and Jonathan for when they're done processing and it's no longer in the drawer. What'll change? And I'd be so fascinated to know if anything does.
Yeah. I
We text all the time about what we're changing.
already
Thank you.
already texting about changes to come. I did a little work as an intimacy choreographer on the production, and so I had the good fortune of sort of being around for moments that already were just charming and sweet or loving and endearing, and so that was good for me, like, you know, to be there and watch him meet cute on an airplane, and yeah. So okay, friends, I think we have what we need. Thank you for working at Aurora.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Dom.